And next person on the floor will be Handunnetti, please. I don't know if I pronounce it well.
That's perfectly okay. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the opportunity, and I to look more into the gender aspect perspective. Who may not. We have 30 seconds to explain that we have a remittance economy population. 7 million are migrant workers working in the Gulf, and this is the context in which we find working as domestic workers. They are around 40% by now in the Gulf. If you take a percentage, that's about 40% of Sri Lanka's migrant workers working as domestic workers. So we also had an early start into the feminization of migrant labor, because Sri Lanka was more or less the pioneer in South Asia to send women to work in the Gulf as domestic workers. So everyone more or less began way back in 1985. So we have two generations of women who have worked in the Gulf. Work that's done, all the kind of work women have been doing, and how generations of women have been working there. So fast forward to the topic today, which is about the narratives. So because there was a very wholesome introduction to the narratives that are being built, I'll stick to the narratives around women mostly, because it may be a little unique. And so if you find 85% labor force in the Gulf, what has been our response? They were forced to return.
Sorry, excuse me for interrupting you. It's nearly impossible to hear you properly. The audio keeps breaking up. So I am not sure if there is something that we can sort it out from our end. Now, yes.
I'm so sorry about it. Technology is. All right, or can you hear me? No?
Maybe you can directly talk. Maybe this cord is having problem. This earphone having
the headset.
Some short circuit, maybe.
The headset, maybe.
Direct speaking is good.
Sorry about the interruption. So we were talking about.
Now it is okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So I was hoping that I will be minimizing the noise that is around me. The first point I want to make about how the Sri Lankan media looked at the returnees, current situation, because of the pandemic. So much misogyny. I will explain, but there was misogyny and there was ethnic profiling, and mostly religious profiling. Returnees were seen, and often if there was a cluster of people returning from a particular country, there were references made by someone who was a very key person who was heading the COVID task force in Sri Lanka, who said, "Oh, that must be, there was a Muslim." So there was this generalized comment that, if there was infections because of a particular community, a religious community. And the inferences about general practices of health and hygiene in the newspapers, in the television, we saw there were generalizations about how particular communities are more healthy and some other communities are not. Looking at how women were profiled in this narrative, women actually had a negative way of these conversations. There was a person to die due to COVID. We recorded 10 deaths. 10th one was a returnee, a woman, a 52-year-old woman from Kuwait, a domestic worker who was returning. She died after 2 days of returning. So she basically she was sent to a quarantine center. She had heart, but there were references out. A COVID bomb was sent from Kuwait. So there was so much coverage around this COVID bomb coming from Kuwait, and Kuwait was not taking responsibility as a country, even sending people back to their home countries. So that was one dominant narrative. One was about how a particular religious group was viewed, and the second was around how particular countries were behaving and or perceived. And the absolute fear that came out on television, on radio, on in print, to how these people were going to come back, leave a community entirely infected.
Mm-hmm.
People responded with that fear every time there was any information about evacuations. People would respond with fear. Sri Lankans have this popular concept, because we are a remittance economy. We call them overseas. Those who work in the Gulf are referred to. There's a government slogan. They are overseas, but there was no heroism attached when they were returning to Sri Lanka. They were considered COVID bombs, and that's the kind of narrative that the Sri Lankan media largely built. No sympathy, empathy, or except the fear that portrayed in the media. And the other point was how women got also stigmatized. Anyway, domestic workers working in the Gulf suffer a lot of stigma. They experience a lot of stigma in the country, and I'm sure they experience it everywhere else. And going back home, you experience a lot more stigma. There were news reports indicating that, oh, they must be pregnant returnees. They were pregnant returnees. And not necessarily, they had children out of wedlock, but there were such broad generalizations relating to pregnant returnees to Sri Lanka, and highly discriminatory kind of reporting around them, developing a narrative that these women were probably being sent back, were in operation, and that probably was the reason. Whereas women were there with their families, some of them were returning, they already had their families. So that was another narrative, but what was missing was also interesting. Sri Lanka also has, in South Asia, the only country to have a return and reintegration policy at the national level, introduced way back in 2008. With the national policy introduced in 2008 and a sub-policy in 2015, where there is this whole concept of holistic reintegration of migrants coming back home. But they because of the pandemic, when they were returning to Sri Lanka, looking at the angle, whether we have mechanisms in place, the health facilities to support these women, instead of stigmatization, whether they had, when they were going into for treatment, whether there was enough facilities, and the facilitation process that they required. And so there was a broad generalizations around women. Hardly ever saw any empathy or understanding, and hardly any reporting around the policy frameworks and how they're supposed to play out in situations like this, where we are also supposed to look at policies and mechanisms in place and how they really work. Litmus test for the reintegration policy. In a crisis, how do people return to a country, and how prepared are we as a country to absorb nearly 1/10 of our population back into a labor force, and socially integrate, culturally respond, look after them, and look into their health requirements. So I think it myself to those opening remarks.
Okay. Just thank you very much, Dilrukhi. Madam, also sometimes it has breaking up apart the audio. We have understood your arguments.